Hi, my name is Mark Hobrow and welcome to this edition of This Is Vinyl. Today's an interesting one for me because we're going to talk to a couple of specialists in their field. One is a guy called Ian Neal. Ian is a music supervisor, so his job is and role is to work with music for film and TV, occasionally advertising, clearing everything that is required for the use, or as you call it, synchronization to TV or film. The other person we're talking to is Lee Jury. Lee is the Vice President of Disney. That's for the UK, Euroband and North Africa. He is also head of music for the Disney Corporation, and as such has a great say in what music gets used in certain Disney films, and would work alongside people like Ian and occasionally people like myself. We've done one or two things together to explore the relationship between music and film. So I hope you enjoy this one. It's been a real pleasure to do it. So welcome to Lee Jury and Ian Neal.
So I'm Lee Jury. I am Senior Vice President of marketing for the Walt Disney Studios, the Europe, Middle East and Africa region, and have accountability also specifically for the UK also. And in addition, I oversee our music group, which is a licensed relationship with Universal Music, our partner on our soundtracks, and also oversee the stage business for Disney in the region. But primarily my role is around movie marketing, so overseeing the marketing of motion pictures or series that go direct to our Disney Plus platform that are produced by either one of these 7 studios. So Disney Live Action Studio, Disney Feature Animation Studio, Pixar Animation Studios, Lucasfilm, which is responsible for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Marvel Studios, obviously needs no introduction, and then 20th Century Studios and Searchlight Pictures. So 7 studios under the Walt Disney banner, which makes us have a huge breadth of a kind of motion picture offering to our consumers.
Brilliant. So not a lot then, you know.
Not a lot. Busy at times.
And Ian, what about you? I mean, you know, you and I go back quite a way in the music industry. What are you currently doing?
So, as you know, I had a long history working for record labels and publishers within the film and TV community, i.e. Sync, and obviously came into contact with you during that tenure, and Lee as well. We all got introduced together on different projects. Now I'm back to sort of full-time music supervision, so I'm overseeing music content for different productions, be it music documentaries, feature films, TV dramas, TV sports shows, including a couple for ESPN at the moment, which is also a Disney banner, which Lee doesn't get so much involved with, but yeah. And recently sort of moved into producing music documentaries as well. So I've produced a couple of music documentaries in recent years, and I'm about to stupidly do a third one as well. But day-to-day music supervision, overseeing the content, working for the likes of a production company or a studio like Disney, and making sure that the music is right and affordable and cleared and creative and all those wonderful things that we do that most people think that we just sit around drinking one of those and going, how about that song? Yeah, all right, see you later.
If only it were that simple. So look, I want to explore the relationship between film and music. So Lee, how, I mean, you work for the studio, I guess, but how important to you, I mean, with your marketing head on as well, is the music to the film, and kind of who decides what they want in the first place from it?
I mean, look, as a marketeer, you're always trying to kind of unlock, you know, audiences through whatever tools you have in the box, right? And quite often, you know, those tools can be really powerful from the music point of view. And you know, I think some of our studios have done it extremely well. With the likes of Marvel and Guardians of the Galaxy, and most recently Deadpool and Wolverine again. And those creative choices are made by the filmmakers with the likes of Ian, right, and music supervisors on these projects, which, to be clear, is not where I get involved, but we get involved with the marketing of that and trying to, get to audiences through the music. I mean, we've woven a lot of the tracks that have existed on a lot of the Marvel soundtracks into the marketing itself, but also, quite often you'll buy needle drops for ads that just aren't related to the movie, but just makes sense for the marketing because it powers the marketing. So, I mean, in short, to answer your question about how important is that relationship, I believe extremely important. I think that the sort of connectivity between film audiences and music audiences, I count myself as a fan of both, is just huge. And so that intersection is, has to be sort of unlocked as a marketing tool. And we're always looking at ways to do that.
Yeah.
And I think, when you get in the hands of, filmmakers that really understand the power of music, again, recently, someone like Yorgos Lanthimos with Poor Things, or filmmakers that really understand the power of music in their movies to power, or should I say, really to be a cast member, right? Or a story feature within a film. Music plays a hugely important role there. And I think, some filmmakers do it extraordinarily well. And it's just a gift to a marketeer when you have those kind of, creative leaders making great decisions that enable you to do really awesome things with the music in marketing.
But who decides kind of from the outset? I mean, is it the director that starts to piece bits and pieces of music in the film? And do you get the call to go, I've got to have the Beatles, or I've got to have Elvis, or I've got to have whatever in this particular movie, and you have to sort of go, well, we may need to think about that a little harder. But how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, Ian left the building, could talk to that better than me. But look, in my experience, and it has changed a lot over time. And I feel like, it is, I think it's become a more integral part of the filmmaking process in terms of how you can work with a soundtrack. And therefore it does tend to be the filmmakers themselves. But some are more tuned into, what their audience wants in terms of the music choices and their own personal choices, right, creatively, than others. And I think, Ian, you can talk to it better, but
I mean, I think,
it's critical.
It varies, obviously. I mean, if we're talking sort of, a Netflix or a Disney production, then, they're in charge of the budget, and obviously music is part of the overall package. And, money will always dictate what people can have. And, you mentioned the Beatles and the Stones there, yes, there are times where people can afford that. More often than not, for the majority of the stuff, those big A-list artists are out of bounds. But I think it comes down, there's always, at the moment I'm, working with Fullwell Productions, but it's an ESPN sort of like, a project one's about the Galacticos, and one's about the NBA. And, the series producer or director here is making the decisions along with us. We're advising what can be affordable. We might send some pre-playlists, and then, up the chain, they might, they'll look at it and go, yeah, well, we like that, or no, we don't like that. And everyone's got an opinion on music. That is the upside and the downside at the same time. And I think what happens with a lot of the time, with directors that have got a vision for music, or an ear for music, they will bring their own taste to it, and that's not always a good thing. It can be good. Tarantino, clearly, a good thing over many, many, many years. Others will bring their own taste, which might be quite limited, and what they're not necessarily doing is thinking about the audience. So, and Mark and Lee's looking at, who's the audience, who's the demographic, what songs are sort of, and sometimes it works. You can go down a road of retrospective tracks, nostalgic tracks. If you look at, Guardian of the Galaxy, for instance, it works really well. And other times it might not work so well. It really is a melting pot of many decision makers based on taste, based on money, based on who's got the biggest say, and somehow it comes out in the wash. Sometimes it works. The funny thing is, I don't think you'll never really see you'll never see a review of a film that says great film, shit soundtrack. It's very rare, They'll normally just say shit soundtrack, a shit film, and then leave it at that. But okay, I always say when you're making a soundtrack, you can't go out to try and make a cool soundtrack. You go out to what is right for the film, right for the producers, the directors, the studio, and you put the right things in. And if it ends up being something that people want to go out and buy or listen to, then that's a bonus. But if you structurally try and go, right, we need to make another, Greatest Showman or another American Graffiti or whatever it may be, it's like you can't. It's a natural sort of progression. That's my own feeling.
And I think, that point, again, I don't get involved in those decisions at all, but with the likes of, James Gunn on a Guardians of the Galaxy, but, from where I sit, I see that you've got a filmmaker like that is so in tune with music, has great taste, great creative vision, and then casts a character who, part of his thing is listening to his Walkman, right? That's a big story point, and it just enables so much, but which undoubtedly will have influenced the budget in some way. And I'm sure James was asking for the right music budget to fulfill his vision in that instance. And then at the other extreme, like on a smaller budget scale, a recent great example that was really touched me was the Andrew Haigh movie, All of Us Strangers, that we had from Searchlight, which had great music throughout, a couple of brilliant nightclub scenes with Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott. But ultimately, the closing moment in that movie, use of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Power of Love, was just instantly, mesmerizing and just like blew you away. You left the theater in the last minute of that film, just like ripped to shreds. And you're going to go and talk about that movie, and you're going to remember that moment like none other in that film, because it was so powerful. I think those decisions, and I'm sure it was at a different cost base, but creative decision, really well made. And I think, some do it better than others, right?
Yeah.
So again, at what point do you tend to get brought into these things? So it sounds to me like we were talking about the great Southampton Football Club earlier on with Lee. In sport parlance, it's almost like you're a midfield general. You're having to kind of coordinate pretty much everything that's going on and what's right for people. Are you brought in right at the beginning of the film, before the film's made, or do people leave it a bit late and expect it to fix?
Really, again, varies. Tend to now get more involved early on. I'm working on a Lynn Ramsey film at the moment, which is in pre-production, who's very music orientated. And we have, if you have on-camera usages, and to define that, where you see an artist singing maybe to an original song or performing their own song, or, where the actors can actually hear the song and you can't take it out of post. I need to be involved early on to clear those songs to make sure that they can stay in the film. And you'll find more and more these days that a lot of, writers will write in songs, because while they're writing the film, they're listening to music and they're thinking about where those scenes might go. A lot of the time, they don't necessarily need to be played on camera, and, they're ideas that might or might not stay in the edit, and sometimes the scenes disappear. But yeah, I'd like to get, if it's a heavy sort of music orientated film, I like to get involved early. I'd rather do the sort of preliminary work, even if it's more work and the money's the same, just because you can help influence, and you can avoid that scenario of temp love, which is everyone's, they put songs in that they can't afford. They fall in love with them, and then you're then spending 3 months convincing them to sort of, change it to something else. If you can send them a list of ideas initially of, getting into the head of a director of what they like, the style of music that they like, the way the film might, transpire, then that's always a positive thing. But no two jobs are the same, Mark. Literally no two jobs are the same.
What's the negotiation process then? Because are you in your role, responsible for clearing the rights to the sound, well, the recorded rights as well as the publishing rights?
The publishing, yeah. I mean, that's the main role of any music supervisor. I mean, sometimes you get involved in terms of the creative. Sometimes you're just literally given a list of songs by a director who says, "I want that." Invariably, it's not going to be as straightforward as, I've never been able to ever do any movie where you go, "Oh, here's all the songs that you wanted for, and it's coming under the price that you've asked for." So you always end up getting involved creatively. But yeah, I mean, obviously having done it in reverse and having been a rights holder selling music to the likes of myself, it's understanding, who owns the songs, checking the rights. Not everything is as clear as you like to think it is. Yes, it might be registered on the PRS and it might say 100% Sony Publishing. And then you email Sony Publishing and they say, "Oh yeah, this is in 1946 and we have British reversionary territory rights, but we don't have Japan, Asia, West, and then you have to then go off and it's like Cluedo, and the recordings are normally more straightforward. They tend to be with kind of, one, but a lot of the time things move around. We're talking, we're licensing 100 years worth of music now, recorded music. And so your job is to navigate, work out where everything lies, because ultimately, you've got to deliver to the studios, fully cleared. There's no room for error. You can't say, "Well, I couldn't find that one, so let's just stick it in there and and hope for the best." And then it turns out it's a Disney song, and then somebody from Disney comes after you.
we had this. I mean, one of the first, I think probably the first thing that we all worked together on was a film called "I Want Candy," which was one of Lee's films.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like, well, because it's called "I Want Candy," you're a bit stymied right from the start, because there's an obvious song, right, which is Candy. And the question that I think Lee rang me and said, "I've got Ian Neal working on this," and I went, "Who?
Is he any good?"
And he said, "But we're all struggling to find, is there anybody that that might be able to do it? Do we need a strong female vocalist to do this?" So I think it was myself and Martin had a connection with C. So we got in touch with Melanie C and said, "Can you do this?" But there was a whole thing behind that, wasn't there, with clearing the publishing rights?
Yeah, because although there's no copyright in the title of the song, once you call it the name of a film, I mean, Lee and Disney, they could have called it "I Want Candy" and not used the song and been absolutely fine, because it's an expression, it's a general expression, "I want candy," but because we were using it and using the song in the film, you then have to sort of then pay kind of twice, if you like. You have to pay for the copyright of the song and the copyright of the title, because you've named it the name of the film. I can't remember what, I've done that on a few occasions. I've got one at the moment where they're using a very well-known late 70s sort of new wave song, and they want to call it the name of the film. And I'm like, well, that's fine. If you're using the song, and they're like, "Yeah, but let's not tell them. Let's tell them we're going to call it something else." And I'm like, "But the film's going to come out," and then the publisher, publishers are not stupid; they know. So, I mean, these are all the things that you just pick up as you go along. I mean, obviously, Mark, you talk. We also met through BIM and AIM and stuff, and obviously going to music schools like that now and having part of the curriculum of having music copyright and synchronization. Those are the things that I didn't know, I picked up along the way through my career, but now these are the things that are taught. So anyone that comes out of those sort of schools knows all this stuff automatically.
Yeah, well, some of them.
Well, some of them, yeah. You'll be surprised how many people, still.
I remember with "I Want Candy."
I had an anecdote, Mark, as well, just because you were talking about "I Want Candy," and I remember that very fondly. It was 2007. But funnily enough, the anecdote relates to today. It's weird because we're about to announce at this event in California this weekend, like the next lineup of our movies. And one is a sequel to 2003's Freaky Friday with Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan. And
great film.
Useful thing to mention, because at the time, we were looking for angles in '03 that could make that movie kind of come to life for us in the UK and give us a creative and a publicity hook around the premiere. So we got hit girl band of the moment, Girls Aloud, to do a track, You Freak Me Out, which was a UK exclusive that we put on the soundtrack. We did a music video for it. It didn't really get a single release. It was really done as a marketing exercise, and it was when you had those I've forgotten the name of them, that like some of those music TV channels where you could just place a music video and watch it just go gangbusters, and it became a really powerful marketing tool. But it became relevant this morning because I'm thinking, why don't we just go back to that again and like get them to redo it? They've just had a hit tour 20 years later. Nostalgia is the biggest power play with this kind of movie, and go back there. But it also underscores, where things are a little different from my perspective to like Ian's world, where he's in the production. He's working with the talent on making those creative decisions, whereas I'm 9 times out of 10 given a finished product to go off and like work with each of those tools. That's an instance where it's like, right, there's a very relevant UK opportunity, and we've done a couple of these. The last decent one we did was with Celeste on the Pixar animated movie Soul, where we got her to partner with Jean Baptiste to do
brilliant.
I've forgotten the track.
I know.
And but like, I wish we could do more of those, but then a lot of the times you got brilliant filmmakers making good creative decisions, and you get the tools to work with in the first instance.
Brilliant. And what about? I mean, one of the things that I'm interested in for the purposes of this podcast, and the subsequent stuff that I'm going to be doing, is the original soundtrack. There are collectors out there all over that love an original soundtrack recording. They love the LP. They love to buy these albums. How important? I mean, I was thinking about Guardians of the Galaxy was one of those.
Yeah,
I've based an entire kind of playlist in my shop around that Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, and it's built this incredible kind of funk and soul thing, which lasts now about 8 hours, and I get people literally dancing in aisles in the shop to kind of I mean, some of them actually recognize it and go, is this on Guardians of the Galaxy? I think, well, yeah, you've busted, you've got me. But how important? I mean, who gets involved in that? Do you guys get involved in the making of the soundtrack album, or are you then dealing with yet another third or fourth party in the record companies and the publishers? Do you need it as a marketing tool, Lee? I mean, how important are these records?
The vinyl versions, you mean?
Either or. I mean,
I mean,
but
I mean, obviously, I think in the case of Guardians, and like recently, like a Deadpool, some of the sort of irreverence of that overall soundtrack. It's got like, obviously it was very nicely timed. They announced a trailer with Madonna's Like a Prayer, and it just happened to be the 30th anniversary or 25th anniversary of that track. At that time, nicely done. Madonna ended up at the premiere. Nice, all good. But I think Guardian sort of stands out because of its I don't know, the way that it expresses the vision of the character and the filmmaker, and the choices in that soundtrack. Just as you said, you play it all time and time again. The vinyl, even though he listens to a Walkman, and I think we actually did audio cassette versions of it, but no one's got an audio cassette player to play it on anymore. But it really did blow up on vinyl and sold, just so many copies. It really was very powerful as a marketing tool, for sure. And I think we did club nights, and Mark, that takes me back to you and me working together, how we met, which was like using music events and club nights and soundtracks.
Yeah, well, we did studio
back in our Miramax film days with those kind of things. But look, now I would say the power of either a soundtrack in the case of a Guardians, because of the sort of the journey that you go on with that movie, and the songs are so important to the overall narrative of the film. Is one level, but single tracks use, and the sort of love that I just use the Power of Love example in All
Yeah.
the Strangers, you know, as something that will make you go online and purchase that track, and it becomes another marketing route. And we tried to do some more things with Universal Music on that. Again, so I'm sort of meandering here, but I think when you talk about music and the power of music and nostalgia and couple those together in a filmmaker's creative vision, I don't think there's been a better example of late than Saltburn with Murder on the Dance Floor.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Yeah,
I mean,
just
like what that's done for that film and for a young adult audience, like discovering, you know, I almost think of that film as like the Pulp Fiction of another generation, right? It really, you know, was something that was extremely topical for a young adult audience, which I remember vividly when I was a younger lad and Pulp Fiction and Res Dogs appeared. My life
was one of those. I mean, I actually recently bought Pulp Fiction. I realized I didn't have it on vinyl, and I needed it. And I can't stop playing it. Again, that's just one
such a great soundtrack. Yeah, Jackie Brown as well, one of the best.
Yeah.
And one of the other ones that I had the great pleasure to work on was Train Spotting. When you think about the importance of the music to that film, and I was talking to Mike Smith the other day, who was the publisher that was doing that, and he said the budget was $100,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And for $100,000 to get both sides of this, so the recording and the publishing, to get artists like Iggy Pop and David Bowie and Underworld.
Yeah, New Order, Pulp. I licensed a couple of tracks. I just started at Universal those days. I'd also love to shake the hand of that music supervisor that did Lock, Stock and Snatch, but I can never remember his name.
I did. Ian.
Yeah. But I mean, look, funnily enough, Martin, it's a conversation to be had when we meet up. Is that I'm working on a few indie projects at the moment that we've got the rights to the score and potentially license the tracks, and one of them is with a top end. I mean, well, a huge actor, which Lee has definitely worked on a few films with, and first directorial debut. And I'm like, this needs to be more than just a streaming Spotify list. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the process now of trying to team up with a label, one of two labels, to do a JV that we actually can put together a vinyl soundtrack, because the manufacturing's there now. That's been increased, as you know. It's easier. So a couple of years ago, you were looking at a 6-month lead time. Now you're looking at maybe 3. And if you've got a film that's going out worldwide, you start hitting 3, 4, 5,000. Everyone's making a few quid. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and so I'm now thinking, a bunch of things that I'm working on, and like I really want to, I don't want just Sony or Universal coming along and go, we'll put this out, digital release. It's I can do a digital release. I can just put a playlist together on Spotify. So I think the return of vinyl, which clearly is going up and up every year for artists. I think there is a space in the soundtrack market for the right projects, and whether they're cool indie things or as Lee's saying, something as prolific and amazing as Guardian, then I think hopefully we'll get back to some physical stuff. I mean,
I think as well, like the sort of collectible nature of it. I mean, I've worked through the 29 years of my career. It's through this sort of the onset of the DVD phenomenon to now the, I don't want to say demise, but like the sort of decline of the DVD business, which has been obviously extraordinary, but still remains a collectible component of the film offering, but much less so. But there's something about the sort of resurgence of vinyl that feels like it's that tangible relationship you can still have with a movie that you love, and that actually getting it out of that sleeve, few beers on a Friday night, playing that album, it brings back so many memories, isn't it? You can't beat that feeling of dropping the needle on a track, which takes you back to a movie in a time and a place where you first experienced that film.
Well, I just started
there's the collection.
Infiltrate the girlfriend's flat, and there's just some of my records. And I know in there, if I had time, I could pull out That'll Be the Day. I could pull out Quadrophenia. I could pull out Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I could pull out Koyaanisqatsi. There's soundtracks there Some of them are recent, some of them, totally, Lee's going in these cupboards.
No, it's not. It's because you just mentioned one.
Go
Because
on.
you just mentioned one of these. Someone did this with my 50th. They knew me well.
Go on. Oh, I never knew. Right, okay.
You in the middle of that.
That was the film that literally.
It shouldn't be tucked away in the cupboard, so you can't show this video, Mark.
Yeah. That was the film that really enlightened me to, as a teenager, to music and film. I mean, not just because it was obviously, a concept album of The Who, but because the film incorporated all those brilliant 60s tracks that I was familiar with, but there was some I wasn't. And I was like, how did they end up on a film? And that was honestly that I saw that film at 14, 13. I went, sort of bunked into sort of various sort of Odeons that you could get in through the back, because I think it was an 18. And I saw it about 5 times at the cinema.
I remember going to an anniversary screening of it in Brighton years ago with Ellis, another Geordie. Great movie, great memories. But yeah, that's the thing. I just think that vinyl, like, I think maybe more so than like CDs and DVDs, just has a place that connects deeply to movies that I hope will continue for a long time. I've certainly amped up my vinyl collection as opposed to my DVD collection. I will stream and sit and put movies on, but my physical relationship is really important with music through vinyl as a medium.
You talked about it being a very collectible thing, which I think it is, and that's part of the reason that these podcasts started, because I was trying to explore how collectible vinyls got to. Do you both think that, bearing that in mind, that there's scope for asking artists or directors asking artists, say, can you give us something solely for the soundtrack album? We just want to make it even more special, a bit more collectible.
Well, that's an interesting thing. And actually, Lee, I need to introduce you to somebody who I met a few months ago, who are a company that actually are trying to they work with the record labels, and they work with specifically with new artists as well. And they're bolting on assets from the film to actually sort of like enhance. And I actually did mention you, Lee, and I'll send you the deck first. But
please, great.
Yeah. And I think, stuff like that, because, and they started off as a company that were basically a couple of years ago, I got introduced to them sort of like doing NFTs, which I was very skeptical about the whole NFT thing. But now they've moved into sort of like, sort of physical stuff, little additional, like, Lee was mentioning earlier on, you can get little cassettes of like the albums. And even though they're like little key rings, and they don't work on a cassette player, you can then tap them, and then you can actually get the barcode, and then you can actually get the, so there's lots of little sort of additional things, which I think ultimately make the, people do want to still collect stuff. I genuinely believe that the physical item and anything else you can get that nobody else can get, whether it's, the first 100 people get a poster. I went to Lee's screening of Let It Be a couple of months ago, and I've got a poster which I'm going to get framed now I'm here, and stuff like that. You get 100 posters that are in the so I think there's always been a discussion about how film companies and music companies can work together, and sometimes it when they get it right, it's great. But Lee's got one job, the record label's got another job, I'm in the middle of it all. Timing's not always right, but I know, having known Lee for 50, he's one of these people that always, how can we do something that we can add to the value? Because he knows that music will, attract an audience to the film and the music company, but quite often it falls between the cracks because it's a last minute or a budgetary thing. But I think we're in a world now. Yeah.
Do you think there's ever a case of the soundtrack album becoming bigger than the film?
There's been a couple over the years. I can remember reading up on this. I think it was in Q or Face or one of those. And there was a Dennis Hopper film that was called The Hot Spot. Right. And I'll send it to you, Mark, after the call. And it was like a jazz orientated, and obviously jazz is not something that gets used very heavily in films. And everyone said that, and the film didn't really sort of take off at all, and it became one of those sort of soundtracks that everyone sort of just buzzed about. But I think, you've got to see the film to appreciate the music, right? So I think more often than not, it's unlikely. You're more likely, you're 99 times out of 100 have a hit film that the music's there, but it doesn't necessarily take off. I think you're looking at maybe 1 in 100, maybe more, where somebody's gone, this is a great soundtrack, but no one's seen the movie.
Yeah.
It's funny. I can't say that it's necessarily going to be bigger. What I can say is there are soundtracks that I go back to, but I don't go back to the movie. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd say a great example of that for me, I worked on the marketing for it many years ago, was the Julian Schnabel movie Basquiat. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
With, Jeffrey Wright playing Jean-Michel Basquiat. But it was an awesome soundtrack.
Yeah.
Had like Hill in it, Van Morrison, PJ Harvey, Joy Division.
I can see that. I
don't think I've ever seen the movie more than once. But
no.
Not because it was a bad movie, but I don't know. I didn't feel like I needed to go back to it, but I've listened to the soundtrack a lot.
Yeah. Saturday Night Fever is another one, which, because
you listen to the songs, you don't necessarily. The Big Easy was one for me at the time as well.
Oh, yeah.
He's had a lot of New Orleans and Cajun stuff that I never really was familiar with. And, and I probably watched the film once since, but so many of those tracks have ended up being used on ads and stuff. And, that's always a good litmus test as well. When they turn up in popular culture elsewhere, that you've done something. More often than not, it's advertisers that follow the film industry and not the other way around, in terms of following cultural moments and but also following them, picking music from films and sticking them on ads as well.
Yeah, and what about composers as well? Because I'm thinking people like back in the day, John Barry, but more recently that Hans Zimmer, John Williams. Does that make a difference, Lee? With when you're getting the early days of building the film, or you're talking to the directors or the production team, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, we got Hans Zimmer doing the soundtrack." Does that spark with you?
Yeah, I mean, if you got Hans on board, I think you're all good, right? If you can get a hold of him, I guess, right? It's like, look, again, from a marketing point of view, big name talent, that you associate with great movies like Hans Zimmer, Michael Giacchino. I mean, absolutely. I think the way that these masters create audio motifs for movies. I mean, it's funny, just pleased to say that we've just finished marketing the most successful animated release of all time, and Inside Out 2. And if you think, the Giacchino piano riff in that just kind of owns the emotions throughout the film, you can't hear that anywhere and not immediately identify it with this wonderful film. And I think that's the genius of, again, a filmmaker's vision, working with a great craftsman like a Giacchino or a Hans Zimmer, and then us being able to kind of use that, it's in some respect less in the marketing, but just in terms of the long-term value of a film. I mean, when I think about what we're trying to do with our movies is market films in a way that you sort of start a relationship with it and you want to revisit it again and again, whether that be, as I just said, like sometimes just listening to the music or watching the film again, streaming the movie, watching it on DVD. But you want these films to have a long value for a long time. And I think that the music component can really play a massive role in that.
Go on.
And directors will find their own people as well. I mean, obviously, if you look at, we were talking about Yorgos earlier, the soundtrack to Poor Things has had great reviews, and Erskine Fendrix, I don't think had done much before. I think he's in a band, and so directors are very good at also sort of finding people that they've either come through film school with, or they've done a short with, and so there's always new talent. Hilda Gersten's that lady did Batman. So I mean, we talk about the greats, John Barry, Ennio Morricone, but there's still, that's the one good thing is it's still brilliant original scores coming through all the time.
And what about, I mean, you flip that a little bit, and there's cameos that can come into films that you're not necessarily expecting. So I'm thinking like Elton John in Kingsman or something like that. You did that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that was a trade-off for Matthew being able to do Rocket Man. But yeah, I mean, again, directors' choices. Sometimes they ask you for ideas. I mean, one of my favorites was not my favorite film, but a favorite artist when I was, much younger in my teens was Jonathan Richman. So when he, when he rocked up in Something About Mary, that was like, that was not an obvious choice for anyone. If I'd have suggested Jonathan Richman to, the 200 plus films that I've done, they'll go, who, what? It's like, so yeah. I mean, the music really can have such an effect. And I think, when people get those things right, it can have, more value than what it actually cost to license. So yeah, and you see now a lot of artists, Johnny Greenwood, become as much as an established composer as he is a band member of Radiohead. Johnny Marr turning up to play guitar on Inception and other Hans Zimmer things, and I mean, everyone wants to sort of put their stamp on it because it's there. It's there forever. It's there for history.
Well, I remember Lee. We a film that you did, There Will Be Blood, which
wow, Johnny's. I mean, from the opening frames of that movie, and that is a movie I've been back to recently. It's the best in-flight movie if you need 3 hours to kill and you want to just go on an epic journey. But like from the piercing sounds that he created in that opening sequence with the first strike of oil, well, I always remember it was like, okay, there's a title, There Will Be Blood, Paul Thomas Anderson, it's Daniel Day-Lewis. Where's this going? And like visually, you open on this shot of this mine. And
Texas, the
intensity of those first chords of the music immediately tell you are in for a few jumps along the way, and this thing's gonna shock you just from those sounds. And that to me comes back to that point about that score, the craft in the score being such a vital character in the storytelling.
And
you put me
I think
in a screening room to watch that film at about 10 o'clock in the morning once. And came out of it about 2 hours later, kind of almost shaking because it was so powerful.
I think, unless I might be wrong, but I'm sure I remember sort of hearing that Johnny Greenwood just wrote some things without not actually writing them for the actual scenes, and just wrote some things for the director, and then they just lifted them and put them in. I mean, how true that is, there's always, but I think at the time I definitely read that because, that was only like his second or third film. So he wasn't steeped in sitting there watching, narrative and going, right, this needs to have a sort of like, a lift here and blah. He just wrote some like ideas based on, which I always find, amazing that people can do that. I'm always in awe. People go, oh, you can find all these songs. It's like, they're all sitting there waiting for me to discover. The composer has to literally pull a piece of music out of nowhere and make a director and an audience like it. So,
I remember we were doing some of the promotion on that film for Lee, and I came up with this idea. Me and Lee were talking and said, well, let's get Johnny Greenwood into a room and we'll put a whole load of students from up and down the country and they can do like and I rang Chris Hufford, who managed Radiohead and another said, Chris, can I have Johnny to come and talk to a bunch of students? And he just laughed at me and went, no way. I said, well, why not? He said, well, he won't do it. He can't talk. He can't stand there and talk. I said, hang on, he's on a stage in front of his people on a weekly basis and doesn't bat an eyelid. And he said, yeah, well, that's different. He can't actually just kind of stand up in front of people who would go to pieces. And it's like, so we couldn't use him. We had to. Who we got now? Probably Lee.
I think what's really great now, though, and I know Lee will definitely, tap into this or lean into wherever he can, is that, because of social media, and obviously artists having big audience followings, and there are people like Edith Bowman now that regularly doing
Oh yeah,
features
she's brilliant.
and
Yeah.
tapping in, and having Q&As and talking to the musicians and talking to the I think that, that wasn't available. It was like, in the old days, it was like put out a soundtrack, sticker it up, and, and obviously people would go and buy it. And even though that money chain has sort of like elapsed, the opportunity to sort of promote and push things and get things in front of people, and it's much better now in that respect. I mean, Sophie Ellis Bextor is a good example. Kate Bush, I'm not sure that they would have had the same impact back then, because the record companies would have been rushing around trying to push out a CD single. Whereas now it's like anyone can listen to it, anyone can talk about it, they can use it on their TikTok socials. I don't know whether the money's necessarily exchanging hands in the same way it was, but the promotion and the longevity of these songs are now being created.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Britt, guys, I'm appreciate I'm taking up a chunk of your time. This has been brilliant, been fascinating. There's a question I've been asking everyone I've been interviewing, which I might adapt a little bit, but it was going to be, if your house is burning down, you got a chance to rescue one record, what would that record be? I might adapt that a little bit and say, if you could run in and just pull out one soundtrack album, what?
Well, that depends whether you've actually sort of, chronologically categorize your albums, alphabetically. Which right now they're not. I can promise you, by Christmas I will be sitting there putting them back into alphabetical order. Oh God, a soundtrack that on vinyl. Ooh, I mean, I'd have to still say Quadrophenia.
Yeah. Just
because I love the film so much as well. But yeah, probably, yeah. Or, yeah, I'd say, yeah, still Quadrophenia. Predictable, but there you go.
What about you, Lee?
Oh, it's a tough one. I mean, the vain person in me, because someone did this really cool thing with the Guardians soundtrack cover for Volume 2, where they photoshopped people, and I was one of them, into the cover. So I've got a copy of Volume 2 with me on the cover, which is great. But
just one version, Lee.
Huh?
Is that just one version? There's
the only copy of it available.
Yes.
I do like that, but I think if I had to, yeah, I mean, it's funny. A record. This is so weird, but you've known me a long time. My relationship with music probably goes back to my parents, right? Because my dad was massively into the Doors, and I have a picture on the wall here again that is the only copy of a picture. I'm gonna have to show you, Ian, this now, because this is a whole other story. I can tell you that my father took that picture. I may have told you this. That is on the Magical Mystery Tour. My dad is 23 years old on his honeymoon with my mum.
He took that picture.
And he died in 2005, and in 2007 or 8, I never watched breakfast television, turned on the TV, and there was a couple from Torquay talking about this DVD. This gets to your world, where they couldn't get any of the music rights because it was the Beatles, but it was like behind the scenes of the Magical Mystery Tour. And midway through that, like on the news thing, I watched this couple. It'd been interviewed, and they showed some clips, and there was this very iconic visual of John Lennon and George Harrison stood on these white building in Watergate Bay in Torquay. And I'm like, we've got family pictures of that. And it was from my dad's Polaroids from their honeymoon. And so I went out to HMV on Oxford Street, and I bought a copy of the DVD, and I've got it. And halfway through that film, and I only discovered that film because of watching breakfast TV for some bizarre reason that day, fate. And midway through it is a 23-year-old dad taking that picture, caught on someone's.
No way.
So, and actually, my cousin, who was only a few years younger than my father, sent me my dad's copy of the Magical Mystery Tour on vinyl. So I'd say it'd have to be that one.
Oh, without a doubt. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
gotta
That's
go.
amazing.
Got to go with that.
I wonder how many times that picture's been reproduced without permission, Lee.
I know. Well, if you go online, you can find versions of it, but that is, we're the only ones that have got these negatives and the pictures of those pictures. And there's Lennon. I've got Lennon ones. Yeah, bonkers.
Have you told Paul? I know you met him a few times. Have you told him?
No, I haven't. I was too nervous.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Brilliant. Love that.
But I think I'd have to save them all anyway, Mark, in a burning van, like try and how many you can get. But
big arms.
They're heavy. They're bloody
Yeah.
heavy, and they're
Yeah.
big. As I
Yeah.
realised the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've lugged my collection around with me for donkey's years, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So much so that I had to open a shop to contain.
This is true. Yeah.
that,
And
Yeah.
half the music industry are now my clients, and I've got lists of people that are trying to source albums that some of them, if I see them, I'm having them first. So
Yeah, I know. I've stopped asking you, Mark. You just go, yeah. If I find that, I'm keeping it. Thanks.
yeah, but
I did find Nighthawks at the Diner by Tom Waits as an original release,
Oh, well, that's
and
good.
actually only 25 quid, and it's in really good nick.
See, I'd have charged you 40 for that.
I know. See, I mean, yeah. Where's your mate's rates?
But if you get a Jim Jarmusch version of Down by Law and the soundtrack of that with Tom Waits on, I'd have that.
Well, yeah. Lee's gone to look for more vinyl. I know he has. Look, he's gone.
Oh, look.
no, I'm just talking to my wife out the window for a minute. Give me a sec.
Right, we're pretty much done, man. So it's good.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's fun. Stuff like this, which is much more about people's stories and their love of vinyl and their love of music, and
Yeah.
I mean, Lee's stories just it's just brilliant stuff like that. That's what makes people listen to stuff like this, I think.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I really, really.
Thanks, mate.
Well, Mark,
Yeah,
let's get
and
it
listen-
arranged for September when you can come down. I'd love to host you both over here. Be
Yeah.
nice to have you come and before it gets cold. That's the one condition.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, exactly.
We built an outdoor kitchen, Mark, so with a wood oven and all of that. So come and hang out, and then we'll play records.
I've got quite a lot
look
of
forward to that.
wine downstairs as well. So I've got
Exactly. There's loads of wine. We'll
So-
get hammered, play records, and have fun. That'd be great.
Genius.
Love it.
On
Love
that-
that. On
Good
that
to see you,
note,
boys.
Thank
see you
you.
later. Cheers, Lee. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.